Good morning, members. It's time and we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, information paper issued since the last meeting. Well, those the documents are related to the items under discussion today, so if members have no particular comments, I will move on to item 2 on the agenda. Maybe now we could invite the administration to join us. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda. Items for discussion at the next meeting. Next meeting will be on the 25th of February, Tuesday, 2:30 p.m. The administration has proposed one discussion item, heritage conservation. Welcome, Secretary. Secretary, we're just talking about our next meeting on the 25th of February. It's a Tuesday. The meeting will be at 2:30 p.m. So far, the administration has proposed just one discussion item, heritage conservation. If the Bureau would like to propose other items, please let us know as soon as possible, so we can inform members and prepare for those items. Ms. Alice Mack, please turn on Ms. Mack's microphone. Please turn on Ms. Mack's microphone. Staff, please turn on Ms. Mack's microphone. Use the microphone at the next seat, please. They're following up on that. Please do so quickly. Perhaps the microphone's not working. Yes, Ms. Mack. Now, in the paper, the list of outstanding items for discussion, item 3, I have proposed a members' bill to amend the waterworks regulations. I see that the proposed timing for discussion is the first quarter of 2020. We are already in January, and then the chairman just informed us there's just one item for the February meeting, heritage conservation. In that case, can we also take up this item at the next meeting? The chief executive just announced people's livelihood measures, including imposing rent control, and they won't allow unscrupulous landlords to jack up water tariffs and electricity charges for their tenants. So can we take up this bill item for discussion at the next meeting, because we would like to speed up the work on the members' bill? Well, yes, it's not just, I'm sure there's more than just one item for next meeting, and we see there are other items scheduled for discussion in the first quarter. So thank you, Ms. Mack, for your suggestion. And you can see on the list of outstanding items for discussion, there are other items scheduled for discussion in the first quarter of the year too. So, Secretary, please take a look. Yes, we'll go back to look at the various items, see if we could add more items to the agenda. We've heard Ms. Mack's wish, and if we could do it, we will do it. I will inform the Secretariat soon. Well, because it was some time ago, and Ms. Mack would like the item to come back to the development panel for discussion in the first quarter of 2020. So please confirm with us as soon as possible. Mr. Lau, Kenneth Lau. I'd like to ask about the Lung Kwu Tan case in Tuen Mun West Area. Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Frankie Yik. I've just pressed the button for the next item. Okay, if there are no other questions, then we move on to item 3 of the agenda. PWP Item Number 767CL, Planning and Engineering Study for Lung Kwu Tan Reclamation and Replanning of Tuen Mun West Area. Colleagues, if you wish to speak, please press a button. First of all, may I welcome the various representatives from the administration. In particular, I'd like to welcome the Secretary for Development to the meeting. Well, there is a list of attendees, so I'm not going to go through it because I believe members have many questions. So can I now invite the administration to do a brief presentation on the item, please? Yes, Mr. Tang, Alan Tang, Chief Engineer of the CDD, would like to do a brief presentation. Thank you. Yes, good morning. I would like to take members through PWP Item Number 767CL, Planning and Engineering Study for Lung Kwu Tan Reclamation and the Replanning of Tuen Mun West Area. The government has been adopting multi-pronged approach to increase land supply as far as possible. In December 2018, the Task Force on Land Supply submitted a report to the government. It's recommended giving priority to study the reclamation at Lung Kwu Tan and development of the river trade terminal site. Now, the proposed reclamation covers an area of 220 hectares to 250 hectares. There are now various industrial facilities. There are power stations to the south and to the north, and then to the east. You can see for the yellow shaded and pink shaded areas, those are brownfield sites. And then there are sites along the shore. We propose to use them for various industrial uses, and that will support the construction industry, environmental protection industries, and other industries. This site will provide an opportunity for rationalization and of the land parcels near the river trade terminal. And then for the reclaimed sites, they would help to provide jobs for local residents. To the south of the proposed reclamation site, that's the Tuen Mun West Area. In the study, we're going to redo the planning for Tuen Mun West Area. The river trade terminal, that's the area shaded light blue, and there are other sites as well. The river trade terminal is closer to the Tuen Mun town center. In recent years, there's a drop in the usage of the river trade terminal. In 2018, usage just 20% of capacity. So we want to seize upon the opportunity of the Lung Kwu Tan reclamation to review the need of the river trade terminal, and we'll see how we could move some of the industrial uses from other areas to Lung Kwu Tan to the river trade terminal site. So we would like to explore the potential of residential developments and other beneficial uses. And also for Lung Kwu Tan, the proposed Lung Kwu Tan reclamation and Tuen Mun West Area, we want to improve accessibility. We're going to widen the section of Lung Mun Road. That's the one shaded red, yellow. And then we will also address the various concerns brought about to the Lung Kwu Tan village because of the heavy vehicles passing through. So we will try to build a road to divert such heavy vehicle traffic away from the village. And then we will consider green concepts and eco concepts. We will try to retain the existing natural shorelines as far as possible. We will also consider a green channel. And as for man-made shore, we will consider providing eco shoreline. And then we will provide ample landscaping and greening coverage, including green channel. That's the areas with the dotted white line. And then we will consider the overall quality of living for Tuen Mun residents. We would like to adopt smart and green measures to create a sustainable and people-oriented community with resilience against extreme weather. We hope the cost of the study will be about $179 million. The study covers the scope of reclamation, land use, and the development directions. And we will do various studies such as EI studies, tertiary studies, traffic impact assessment, and so on. And then for the widening of Tuen Mun Road, we will also do preliminary design. We will do investigative study. And then, of course, we're going to hold stakeholders engagement sessions and community consultation. With if funding is approved, then we hope that at the end, in the second half of the 2020, we could start the study. We hope to complete it within 30 months. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Anything else? No? Questions from members? This item has to do with the funding proposal. So according to Rules of Procedure 83A, if members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in the agenda item, the member will have to disclose their interest before speaking. I'll start with members who would like to raise questions. We have Mr. Kenneth Lau, Mr. Michael Luk, Michael Tin, Ms. Alice Mack, Edward Lau, Frankie Yik, Dr. Chen Chong-tai, Mrs. Regina Yip, Dr. Fernando Chang, Dr. K.K. Kwok, and Mr. Leung Chi-Chang. Mr. Michael Luk agreed that he would swap his place with Ms. Alice Mack. So Mr. Kenneth Lau will be followed by Ms. Mack instead. Mr. Michael Luk will come after Mr. Michael Tin instead. So we will discuss this item up to 10:05, 4 minutes for each member. After Ms. Alice Mack speaks, I will draw a line. So if you have anything to add, please press the button early on. We also have Dr. Loy Kwok, who would like to raise a question. We'll start from Mr. Kenneth Lau, 4 minutes. Chairman, I want to declare my interest. I'm a representative of Lung Kwu Tan village, and I also own a plot of land there. At the Legislative Council, I've made it time and again that a lot of facilities like power plants, landfill sites, and incineration sites have been placed near Lung Kwu Tan village. So for right now, there's only a single lane road leading to Lung Kwu Tan village. You see heavy vehicles and garbage trucks going in the area, leading to dust and noise for the villagers for many years. Early on, the government pledged to build a tunnel to lessen the traffic burden in the area. So villagers are concerned about this reclamation project in Lung Kwu Tan. They object to the project. Now about this project, this reclamation and replanning of the project. Based on the papers from a document, the reclamation from the Lung Kwu Tan will be used for industrial uses and reprovisioning the brownfield operations from other areas, it looks like everything is settled. Villagers don't want to see this happen. They don't want to see the land they have been living for generations to turn into industrial sites. They understand that there has to be some trade-off in the development process. If we look at this process as a whole, we want to see if there's a way to improve the quality of life for the villagers, say increasing a number of roads, improving the quality of air, and deal with problem with the seawater. The end purpose is to give the villagers there a peace of mind, and also something to balance the maritime ecosystem. There has to be a comprehensive approach to this issue. If the villagers from Lung Kwu Tan are adamantly against this reclamation project, I will side with them. I hope that. I'm wondering, is there any plan from the government to convert the refractory terminal into residential development areas? So for the Tuen Mun West Area, given the heavy traffic burden there will be an impact on the villagers. As for the government's plans for the traffic in Tuen Mun West, and let's even up to the point of talking about the Lantau Tomorrow plan, is there a comprehensive plan on the part of the government? Who will take this question briefly from me? Villagers' concern about this Lung Kwu Tan reclamation project, I can understand that. There is references to the traffic issue. Now there will be a widening of the Lung Mun Road, so there will be improvement in the traffic in the future. The alignment of the Lung Mun Road, I want to say something about that. For those cars going to the landfill areas in Northwest Territories, there will be changes to the roads there. There will be a distance from the village, say 400 meters or half a kilometers. There will also be works for, say, the Lung Kwu village all the way going to Lao Fao Shan. There will be something to be done about the works. As the chief engineer just said, that we will try to preserve the water body there. In terms of width, it will be 100 meters, so that there will be reasonable accommodation in that regard. Turning to the brownfield operations, when we're talking about the brownfield operations, that it won't be just haphazard in a disorganized fashion. Something will be done about that so we can minimize the environmental impact. Mr. Lau also mentioned development in Western Tuen Mun. As we said, Western Tuen Mun is suitable for resident. It will be public housing, but the specific number of housing units, we will have to work on that as well. The traffic infrastructures. The Tuen Mun Chalap link will be commissioned soon in this year. About Route 11, the government also has specific plans, and the plan is going ahead. With Route 11 leading to Lantau, my colleagues from the Transport and Housing Bureau are also looking into that. If there's an increase in population in this area, then there will be enhancements to the transport infrastructure. Mr. Kenneth Lau, do you support this proposal? I have reservations about this. I think there will be a major impact for the traffic in West Tuen Mun. I'm wondering if I hope there can be members from the Transport and Housing Bureau. I think these members has concern about the traffic and environmental issues. I hope, Secretary, maybe you could reach out to Mr. Kenneth Lau and talk to him about the environmental and traffic issue. Next, we have Ms. Alice Mack. A reminder to everyone, after Ms. Mack is done with her question, I will draw the line. Chairman, if we can have more land for future development, and I'm totally to support that, but I just want to get the government to elaborate on this. We are talking about funding proposal for a study only. I want to see if it will also address the concerns that I will bring up shortly. We're talking about reclamation, land formation. As I can see from the paper, it's for industrial use mainly. Can you be more specific about those industrial uses? We have different development areas in the new territories at this point. Brownfield sites have been resumed or will be resumed. If we do go ahead with reclamation in Lung Kwu Tan, would there be an increase in land supply so that the land can be used for the industrial operations from other land resumption activities in the future? And second point about the traffic. We talked about the widening of the Lung Mun Road and also the Tuen Mun link to be commissioned. The traffic load here isn't just about that single district. Say with the Tuen Mun link, it goes to Lantau. There will also be impact on other districts. What would be the traffic burden be like for other districts along the road? What's the traffic burden for the other districts? So we shouldn't just focus on widening a road in this single district. If we do go ahead with the land reclamation and widening of the Lung Mun Road, what would the traffic burden be like for the other districts? Can the other districts take the increase in the traffic burden? With this planning, the Secretary also said that there will also be more land for housing. Here's our concern. If you do a poor job with the traffic planning, you do get extra land, you get people to move in. It shouldn't be just about survival. It should also be quality of living for the people who live there. If you go ahead with a housing development, what about the other amenities, the roads, schools, markets, other amenities? Shouldn't they go along with the housing development? Like these days, we have projects like you start a housing project, but you only have other amenities into place only later on. Would you also look into this in your study, Secretary? As for industrial use of the land, there would, as Ms. Mack just said, that we are resuming brownfield sites. We hope that in the 220 hectares or 200 odd hectares that we will get, we hope that we can reprovision these brownfield activities in this land from reclamation. But then we can't guarantee that we can have, say, this site for site exactly for the kind of swapping going on. But it's different now. We still need land in the future for Hong Kong. We want to have the land here. If there are brownfield operators who do want to carry on with their business, we hope that we can have the space to provide them. Turning to the traffic, I do understand that members really care about this issue. We talked about the P1 road. We hope that the infrastructure development can catch up with the future population development. We're looking at the things at different levels. It's more than just the Lung Mun Road or other roads in the district. We also look at the highways in the Tuen Mun district, but then there has to be a limited scope on this work project. But for the future studies on the traffic, there's a large-scale initiative going on in the Transport and Housing Bureau. We're also looking at something about the railways. It will be a major study, something about the facilities across different districts. Say, with this Route 11 leading to Lantau, should there be a connection leading to Tingyi? There will be studies at different levels to make sure everything fits with one another, so that if there is population increase in the future, is the traffic going to be able to cope with it? If we're up to the point of the outline zoning plan, and we see it's an increase of, say, 20,000 families, then we will look into the carrying capacity of the traffic infrastructure. That's why we have something like a traffic impact assessment. This is something the government will address in the future. At this point, Ms. Alice Mack, would you support this proposal? If the government can get the local villagers and residents to accept this proposal and they can cover these areas in a study, then I will support this proposal. But I hope that the government can truly engage with the stakeholders. Other members who would like to speak, please press the button.
I'll draw the line if there are no other members who wish to speak. Next, Mr. Michael Tien. Thank you, Chairman. The largest landfill in Hong Kong is in Tuen Mun. We have sewage treatment plants, power stations. You know, all the facilities people do not want are in Tuen Mun. Tuen Mun has it all. And now you're going to put more industrial areas there. In industrial areas, of course, there will be construction materials and so on. You know, in near residential development or near your home, would you want to see industrial area that handles construction materials? No one, of course, because most of these materials are construction materials, and so there are many such problems. The way I see it, along Lung Kwu Tan Road is very busy, and many vehicles drive past this road, and many people want a new road. So for this project, I support the proposal of a new road, but I don't want any of the other items. But of course, the government won't have that. And then the government says it's going to do reclamation, and they're going to give you 100 meters some shoreline. So that means there's a beach, you will be playing there and enjoying the beach, and then there's a huge industrial site next to it. And, you know, I've never seen something like that. I'm trying to imagine what it would be like. To me, I would like to keep the beach. I want the road. But I don't want industrial facilities, residential developments, maybe. So that's why I really cannot support the direction you're taking in your study. But you are always one win-win. I won't just oppose for the sake of opposing. Can I propose this to you? Please consider it. I've prepared this plan for you, Secretary. Okay, if you do reclamation, this whole section along the beach, leave it alone. Just do the reclamation up there. And then looking out, and then the beach will just be looking at the sea is fine. But I still want the road. It's fine to have the road. You do a viaduct, and then when people from the beach look up, they just see a viaduct, but not an entire industrial area. It would be better this way, right, Chairman? And then here, best if you just do residential development, and there's not going to be a problem. Many people are here, you know, in the public gallery, members of the public. So I believe this proposal would help to create land from reclamation. But really, if you want to use this reclaimed site for industrial use, there are many, you know, there is much objection. So best if you just do residential development. For the beach here, I hope very much you will keep it. Don't reclaim the beach, and we want the new road. So, Secretary, can you promise that when you are given the funding, you would also look into this proposal? I'm not against giving money to do a study. I'm just saying that your study must also cover this proposal. Then I will be able to support you. Otherwise, or maybe if eventually the study findings show that you can't support my proposal, then you can't count on my vote. Secretary, a brief response, please. There are some fundamental issues we need to bear in mind. You know, there is a demand for land in Hong Kong, not just for residential use, but for other purposes as well. I'm sure members, Mr. Yik, for example, would know about that. Now, brownfield sites are an important part of our land bank, and we want to resume brownfield site for industrial use. Can we really do so? No. As for Mr. Tian's proposal, now, if we do that, there will be a substantial reduction in the land area reclaimed, and then we have to look at the cost effectiveness of the project. But of course, we could look at the overall scale of the project, and then we could include Mr. Tan's proposal in our study. Well, industrial use, you can put it elsewhere, not just in Tuen Mun. I'm just saying you are putting everything in Tuen Mun, and that is the problem. Do you want to have there's a beach, do you want to cover it up? And I hope you understand, in Hong Kong we have a shortage for residential sites. We need industrial use sites too, but they don't have to be here. the government just saying, well, since already there are industrial sites in the area, we could just put a few more sites there. But no, but I think then you are putting things the other way around. Why don't you let different districts take on some industrial sites? Well, I'd like to thank the Secretary for agreeing to look into this proposal. Yes, we could look at different scale of reclamation or study. Yes, we could do that. Next, Mr. Michael Look. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, there are always some pros and cons in each proposal. We need to balance the needs of the different nature. Now, this proposed reclamation is for industrial use, but what exactly are the types of industrial use? Because people, when they think about industries, they say, well, there must be chimneys, and so that's, you know, the conventional image of industries. But if it's like a go-down area or logistics purposes, I mean, in Hong Shui Kiu, many brownfield sites will be resumed, and then the users may have to move here. So I'm talking about this whole project. Well, actually, there are two projects here, Lung Kwu Tan and Tuen Mun West Area. You say you're going to create long-term jobs. How many exactly? What's your assessment? Now, for Tuen Mun and New Territories West, you know, Tuen Mun, Tin Shui Wai, residents would like to have jobs closer to their home. So how many jobs can we really create? But there must be proper policy support. Don't just, you know, tempt us with job opportunities. And then go downs or storage areas, if they're going to move here, do they to be government operated or privately operated for the sites? Because if the government is going to keep the sites, and they could control the rent, and then it will be more affordable to the operators. But if you leave it to private operators, then we have to. I'm worried about the business model. Now, if they charge too little for the go down facilities, no one will come and provide the facilities. But if there's to be reasonable profit, maybe rent will be too high, and people will be you know, put off. Now, for the brownfield sites, now the rent is just about a few dollars per square foot. But for factories, the rent is over $10 per square foot, so there's a huge difference. Can the idea really work? I hope in the study there will be more detailed information provided. Now, for estimated number of jobs to be created, we expect that for the two areas it will be more than 50,000 jobs, or up to 70,000 jobs. That's our current estimate. Now, for industrial uses being under consideration, we're not looking at anything that's that causes a major nuisance. Maybe it will have to do with environmental protection and so on, or maybe logistics, maybe car repair or open storage. So we don't expect these industries to be highly polluting. And the other idea is multi-story industrial buildings. Now, if you look at the new territories, there are brownfield operations. They're privately operated. They may build a structure 4 to 5 stories high for industrial uses. And for the government, we're also studying multi-story industrial buildings. So uses from brownfield sites could be moved into these buildings. Now, we have done a study before, and it's technically feasible. For such industrial buildings, of course, there needs to be a higher floor loading. We'll see if we can do it. Well, it can be done, but financially it could be challenging. So we're going to do a study on whether the market wants to do this. Now, as you pointed out, if rent is too low, then it's not profitable. If the rent is too high, people can't afford it. So we will do another study, and then when the findings are out, we will come back to report to members. Deputy Chairman, would you support referring the paper to the Public Works Subcommittee? Yes, I think we should refer the paper to the PWC so we could ask more questions. Next, Mr. Lau Kwok Fan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, this the Lung Kwu Tan for the reclamation will support various industrial uses such as environmental protection industries and so on. But then there are already existing industrial uses in Lung Kwu Tan. Is it that all the lands be taken up is not enough to meet the demand? That's why you need to do more reclamation. Do you have such statistics or data? I think we're taking a broader view. We're just not looking at Tuen Mun West. Let's say we take a Hong Kwu as an example, the brownfield sites there. Now we want to develop a Hong Kwu. We need to resume about 200 hectares of brownfield sites. And then, there are various uses, in logistic uses, for example, that accounts for about 60 hectares. Now, the planning department actually is studying another 460 hectares of brownfield sites. Now, most of them will be for high-density residential public housing development. Not all of them, but most of them. So, brownfield sites currently take up about 1,500 hectares, but that will be substantially reduced. But then there are many activities on brownfield sites which are the key components of our economy. So that's why there's need for us to identify suitable sites for such uses, construction or environmental protection and so on. So for the 200 plus hectares of reclaimed land in Lung Kwu Tan, it will play an important role. And Tuen Mun West, now, if we could provide a new land in Lung Kwu Tan, maybe for some industrial uses now in Tuen Mun West, they could be relocated to the new reclaimed area. For example, the river trade terminal, if in future it can be turned into residential development, and then there will be proper segregation between industrial and residential use, and there will be a desirable arrangement. Now, but I see that if you do additional reclamation, you need additional brownfield sites or land or whatever. But actually, Tuen Mun West is more convenient than Lung Kwu Tan, and still not all the sites have been taken up. So how can you make sure that for the newly reclaimed industrial site in Lung Kwu Tan, it will become more appealing? Because, the traffic network is important. If you don't have a proper network of accessibility, then doesn't matter if you say you use the sites for go down or storage or industrial uses and so on, you won't be able to attract people to go there. As for the Tuen Mun West River Trade Terminal, yes, you say the usage should be substantially reduced, but you told us just now there's still 20% usage. So where would that go? Now, brownfield size is a much broader subject. Now we have 1,500 hectares of brownfield sites. We see there will be substantial reduction. Why? Because the government may resume some of the sites for other uses, including public housing development. And then for such activities, you need to find space so they could continue in Hong Kong. So we can't just look at any the specific industrial sites currently in Tuen Mun West and whether there's high usage. The 20% of the river trade terminal. Okay, the Transport and Housing Bureau has already studied the operation of the current river trade terminal, RTT. Their conclusion is that if there is no need for the RTT, is there a need for reprovision? No. That means in future we don't need an RTT. Right now, what happens that say there's a barge docking for loading or unloading, but actually for the Kwai Ching container terminal, there is not 100% usage, so it could absorb such needs. So there's no need to reprovision the RTT.
I believe the study will take into account like these, right? Feasibility, traffic, at different levels. These will be covered in the study. Lung Mun Road, and the widening, and the other related roads. There will also be new roads, new studies, across the territory, about the major roads, the railway system. The study will come out in the coming next few years. I hope everything can work together so that ultimately the whole transport infrastructure can cope with the load on the system. Now the process will also involve changing to the zoning. So it has to go through the traffic impact assessment as well. Next, Mr. Frankie Yick. This paper says that in the area to be reclaimed, it will be used to reprovision the brownfield operations. My question is that for this reclamation and compared to the other new development areas, are these projects going to tie in with one another? Because we talked about Hongshui Q, part of it, the logistics trade there, some of it will be gone. So I'm wondering, so I hope that part of the area in Lung Kwu Tan will be able to accommodate the logistics trade, but want to see if if it works together in terms of the timing. There's a little reference to the Route 11 and Tuen Mun West bypass. You haven't talked about how these will work together. Secretary, you talked about the Transport and Housing Bureau will cover the transport, but I disagree with the way you put it. As the chief executive put it in her policy address, the priority goes to the transport infrastructure. It shouldn't just be like it goes like you have a development project, but then the transport infrastructure only comes later on. You can't go on like that. So we have this problem with the transport infrastructure cannot catch up with development projects. So in Tuen Mun West Area, even when in the days of Donald Zhang, he talked about allocating land for different purposes. In say area 49, there is 3.5 hectares for some of the purposes. And some of the areas are being used for public land view. So you're replanning everything doesn't mean that the 6.5 hectares previously planned will be gone. Chairman. We'll talk about traffic. There will be studies on traffic. They will cover Route 11. Going forward, the government will make sure that the different facilities will work with one another. When we go to the town planning board and make changes to the planning, we need more than just the planning. We also need a traffic impact assessment. Whoever is planning this has to put forward the figures showing that the transport facilities can cope with the burden. So the intense. Sorry, Chairman, I get what you're saying. That I got your point about the carrying capacity, but I want to bring this point. Why is it that these infrastructure planning isn't part of your study? Once you have the new town planning, and then you only start with the transport planning afterwards, I don't think that's the right way forward. You should be in charge over the whole thing, because you can't do your own thing and then the Transport and Housing Bureau does their own thing. Everyone working on their own can't work like that. I get the point from the member. I respect this point. For each different study, there has to be a scope for each study. The Transport and Housing Bureau, or THB, is doing their own study on roads and transport work, and it would be unrealistic to have every single thing covered in a single study. The other point raised by Mr. Frankie Yick is how things work together on the plot of land. If everything goes smoothly, I hope that by 2028 we can roll out the first batch of land so that the plot of land and the operations there can tie in with what's going on in the other development projects. But if we wait till this land becomes available, it would be unrealistic, because it's the new development areas in new territories will be key to the supply of new public housing. About Area 38, we looked into the studies. If the reclamation in Lung Kwu Tan goes ahead smoothly, we also have to look into whether it would work if we relocate the operations in Area 38 to the reclaimed area. But the 6.5 hectares, we have to wait till 2028. Mr. Frankie Yip, at this stage, do you support this proposal? I do support the study, but I want to make sure that the Secretary for Development will take up the points I've just raised with the Transport and Housing Bureau. You do look into this. I support this study, but it depends on the results of the study before I can tell whether I support the proposal. Next, Dr. Chen Chong-tai. 2 questions. First, some of the pro-established members have a point. They're saying that many facilities there are something the residents don't really like. Give you an example. A few years ago, back in Shenzhen, a few years ago, there were people issuing this signing. They were signed this petition expressing their concern over the landfill in Hong Kong. Shek Hu Chao, the incineration facilities and for the rubbish and landfill site, oil tanks, steel works. And if you're telling us that you want something like an industrial site after the reclamation, then you have to understand that even Shenzhen expressed their concerns about how you're using this area. People in Shenzhen were getting people to sign a petition expressing concerns about the landfill in Hong Kong. Look at this reclamation project. Has the Hong Kong government found out what does the Shenzhen government think about this? It's more than just about development in Hong Kong. It's also about politics in the region. It's something the Hong Kong government should address. Second, in Lung Kwu Tan, it's a habitat for Chinese white dolphins. Some years ago, we started with the 3-runway project. We knew for sure there was an impact on the Chinese white dolphin. The number of the dolphins dropped sharply. When we do this, if we do this feasibility study, I think some organizations, green organizations, have raised questions like the Worldwide Fund. They're saying that the government did conduct feasibility studies about the reclamation, but in the discussion papers for this meeting, we don't see any detailed discussion on the Chinese white dolphins. There was reference to this 12-month survey on the Chinese white dolphins, but in terms of the frequency, how frequently do the Chinese white dolphins show up, and details about their habitat, there's no discussion. Can we talk about, instead of just summary for our reference, can we have more specific details, evidence, statistics showing that the reclamation project will not cause further impact on the habitat of the Chinese white dolphins? Secretary, I want to thank Dr. Chen Chong-tai for his question, but the second question will be addressed by Mr. Lau just then. In terms of planning, we're just doing a study. At the later stage, once we have the results and the recommendations, then we will have to make changes to the outline zoning plans. Under the current town planning process, different stakeholders also have a part to play. If they have their views about the outline zoning plan, they can express their views. My view is that different stakeholders, whether they're in Hong Kong or outside Hong Kong, the stakeholders can go forward according to the town planning process in Hong Kong. We can, Mr. Lau, want to thank the member for his question. Ecological issues are close to our heart. Back in 2016, we did an on-site inspection. We know that the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department did a study. There was also a report come out related to the 3-runway system. The results of the survey was something similar. In this site of a proposed site of our reclamation, we don't have Chinese white dolphins there. Sha Chao and Lung Kwu Chao Marine Park and the Urmston Road. For these areas, there's a distance between them and our proposed site for reclamation. There's a distance of around 1 kilometer. There are the signs that some Chinese white dolphin do drift closer to the reclamation area, but they are 300 or 400 meters away. We do care about their home range. In the upcoming study, we will do a detailed environmental impact assessment, including the impact on Chinese white dolphins. We will have measures. We see how that can mitigate the impact on the Chinese white dolphins, including something about, say, about the noise during the construction works, or something about the vessels. We also take note of the fact that Chinese white dolphins need a quiet environment in certain times of the year. So that's something we will try to accommodate in our construction. Dr. Chen, do you need further details, statistics from the authorities? I do need them. We only have an executive summary to work with. We don't know the details of the previous technical studies. Can you check if you can provide with further details? We don't have anything right now because we haven't started a study now. But in the past, we did have studies. As for the further details, maybe we will get back to them, because maybe not all of these studies were under Development Bureau. So we have to see what we could do about that. Maybe, Secretary, you can take this matter up and have a detailed discussion with Dr. Chang. And maybe Dr. Chen will need further information on this. Dr. Chang, sorry, I have my reservations. Next, Mrs. Regina Ip. Chairman, we're just talking about Lung Kwu Tan. I put this question to the Secretary for Development Runs. It's controversial here in Lung Kwu Tan. There are concerns about the environment, the air quality, about the traffic, the concerns to be addressed. But the river trade terminal, not many people have talked about the river trade terminal. The usage rate has dropped to 20% in the river trade terminal. You could have gone ahead with the reclamation for that area a long time ago. There's underusage in Kwaichong as well. In Tuen Mun West Area, there are many facilities that people don't like: power plant, eco park. I think there are also 2 steel works plants. This is planning for the Tuen Mun West area. It's a broad topic. Is there a study about relocating the facilities there, making changes to what's going on in the district? Like the steel works there, I know that they don't have much activity going on. Much of that has gone on to mainland China. Any long-term measures about these oil tanks, power, and etc.? I want to thank Mrs. Regina A for a question. For Tuen Mun West and Lung Kwu Tan, these 2 areas are related to one another in terms of the land use. If we're looking at what's going on in Tuen Mun West area, if the reclamation can go ahead in Lung Kwu Tan, then there's room for relocating the industrial operations in Tuen Mun West. But we'll look at the specific recommendations coming out of the study about the specific facilities, the steel works, for example. I don't have anything detailed on that. We have to look at the justifications, the future developments, and then we will make a decision in the future. I think the government should have looked at the replanning of the whole area a long time ago. Do we still need these facilities, steel works? For sure, you also have to reach out to landowners, about the property owners, about the landowners, about the land swap, etc. There has to be broad changes. Some other members also brought up this point about the industrial site, brownfield site. For the brownfield sites, you may have a multi-story facilities for the trucks. Is it something that can be done in Lung Kwu Tan? We talked about these multi-story facilities to accommodate the goods vehicles. These are a nuisance for the people living there. It's going to be noisy. There will also be light pollution. Should you even have them there if you have residents nearby? I remember there was talk about 2 studies about brownfield sites, but nothing came of it. You have been talking about those brownfield site studies for many times. How's it coming along? We talked about that, but what about the consultancy study? I think there are 2. Secretary for Development, maybe you can address that. I'll briefly address that. brownfield site. The study on brownfield site comes in two phases. First, it's about factual description. That idea has been talked about in the panel, relevant panel. We have 1,500 odd hectares of brownfield site. There's plan for the future about what we do about that in the future in North and New Territories. We have around 800 hectares in North and New Territories, and then we have another 700 odd hectares. The planning department is looking at 450 hectares of the site for high density housing. In the future, for brownfield sites, there will be fewer brownfield sites in a smaller area, but we can't just have no brownfield sites in the future, because brownfield operations are still a part of the Hong Kong economy. So for the future planning of Hong Kong, we still need for the brownfield operations. And we also need support for construction and green industries. We talked about the multi-story facilities for the brownfield site operations. We have not finished the relevant study yet. We want to see what the market sees this proposal. If you have facilities that charge too much, no one's going to patronize those facilities. But if you charge too little, then you need massive government subsidies. We hope that by the middle of this year, we can form a view and come to the Legislative Council and give you an idea. We talked about this multi-story vehicle goods car park. Doesn't have to be in this area to be reclaimed, correct? We can't tell specifically whether something will happen in a specific location. We haven't come to that point yet.
Thank you. Mrs. Ip, would you support the paper? Referring it to the PWSC. Well, this is just a funding request for doing a study. It costs about $179 million, so I won't be against doing a study. But then I think the Secretary must address the various issues, especially those raised by Lung Kwu Tan village residents, traffic impact, air pollution quality, and so on. You must address all these issues in your study. Thank you. Dr. Fernando Cheung. There are many major obnoxious industrial users in Tuen Mun. It's not really fair to the residents there. You already have the largest landfill there, and then we have a sewage treatment plants, power stations, so there are so many such facilities. And now you're going to do major reclamation for industrial users, logistics users, or reprovisioning for brownfield operations and so on. Can you not keep the natural habitat? Can you do more? You provide more green uses so there will be proper recreation facilities for residents. Here, the reclamation scale is about 200 plus hectares, 11 Victoria Parks. And as Dr. Jiang Chongtai pointed out, for the Chinese white dolphins, officials say they can no longer sight any Chinese white dolphins. Well, that's obvious because the major projects nearby have driven them away. There were Chinese white dolphins in those waters in the past, but now we no longer see them. And also for Chinese white dolphins, they should be a protected species. It's also a mascot for Hong Kong. So why wouldn't you consider it? And then for Chinese white dolphins, their feeding grounds are usually at the shallow waters. But now you keep, driving them away, encroaching onto their habitat. So for the Lung Kwu Tan reclamation study, why don't you disclose the entire report? We're talking about the 2015 technical feasibility study. You only published the executive summary. You did not disclose the entire report. would you disclose the entire report? After 2010, we've seen changes in Lung Kwu Tan. The airport and the free one-way projects have actually affected the habitat of Chinese white dolphins. They were active in those waters, but now they have to go beyond, bypass Sha Chao and the marine park to go to the Pearl River Delta. So is there an impact? And then paragraph 12, you mentioned the EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment, and you did not mention you would look at the impact on Chinese white dolphins. So would you consider that, including an impact study on Chinese white dolphins? Secretary, well, as we take forward the study, there will be different sectors participating. Dr. Zheng asked whether we would take this opportunity to enhance community facilities in the area. Yes, we will take this opportunity to look at that. As for Chinese white dolphin, I won't repeat what the director said, but put simply, now there's going to be an EIA because we need to obtain an environmental permit. So therefore, the impact on the habitat of the Chinese white dolphins would certainly be included in the EIA study, because we need to propose mitigation measures if we have any chance to obtain the environment permit. So I will also look at what Dr. Chang said. I'll see whether we could disclose the report. Yes, so please try to disclose the information as soon as possible. At this stage, what is your position? I have reservations. Okay, next, Mr. Dr. K.K. Kwok. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know which is the largest site in Tuen Mun that's yet to be put to use? And how many hectares do you know? Dr. K.K. Kwok, can you please say that again? The firing range in Castle Peak, 2,300 hectares. So every 4 PLA soldiers taking up 1 hectare of site. In the past, during the colonial era, the British garrison had nowhere to practice shooting, so that's why they had to set up the firing range. But when we know PLA soldiers now come from Shenzhen, there are facilities, garrison facilities in Shenzhen, and I'm sure they would have space 10 times more than that in Hong Kong. Now, you doing reclamation, obviously, because you want land for residential development or other developments. But here we're talking about pouring tens or hundreds of billions of dollars into reclamation, when we have 2,300 hectares of land sitting at the Castle Peak firing range. I think we should release that land for public use. The CE loves the people, and she's well aware of deep-seated conflict in Hong Kong. One of the deep-seated conflicts is a shortage of land for housing development. Now, since the CE is such a loving mother to us, can you suggest to the CE or the government to come up with the use for the military site there? There are many uses you could put there for recreation, housing, and whatever you think of, you name it. Secretary, for military land sites, our position as the government is clear. Military sites are for defense purposes. They are very different from other purposes. And in Hong Kong, there is no idle military land in Hong Kong. Do you know how often they do practice there at the firing range? Now, I'm not a military expert myself. I don't think we can just, look at it from our angle. Now, I'm just asking whether this is an option you should consider. you know, the site you propose to reclaim is only a tenth of the military site there. Now you are using so much money, you're doing so much to try to do reclamation. It's only because you want to provide Hong Kong people with a roof over their heads. And now our motherland has taken up 2,300 hectares just for shooting practice. But then Shenzhen is just a river away. And then when they try to scare us to say that they're going to curb violence, they say they would be over from the PLA would be over from Shenzhen in just 50 minutes or so. So if we think along the same line, do they still need this? They could do their practice, you know, the shooting practice on Shenzhen side. Secretary, well, I've just stated the position of the government. For the task force on land supply, it actually looked into various possibilities. You know, the Wang Yunfei dare not talk to the mainland about military land. Now, the task force on land supply has come up with near-term, mid-term, and long-term recommendations. They did not see there's a possibility to use the military sites. Now, you're saying the reclamation is mostly for residential development, that we have two major consortium in Hong Kong. If you allow residential development, would it be another demonstration of the government colluding with businesses? Well, I think it's too early to say how we're going to resume the sites, the brownfield sites. Of course, we do not know yet exactly how many units could be provided, but if all goes well, we should be able to provide 20,000 units. And for any major development projects, we will still go by the ratio of 70-30 for public and private housing. Would you resume the sites and then you will put them out for auction, or are we just going to let these two developers develop the sites? Well, it's too early to say. We'll have to do a study, and then we'll have to confirm from a planning angle whether those sites could support 20,000 residential units, and then before we look further as to how to do it. Okay, next, Mr. Lung Kwu Tan. Well, the reclamation proposal is to deal with, is to help with relocating brownfield operations, provide logistics sites and so on. And of course, you say you also see whether there could be residential development. And of course, there's concern about the traffic situation. Now, if you widen Lung Mun Road, would that be enough to address the to provide the traffic support? I'm a bit concerned about that. I see maybe it's not going to be enough to address the needs of residents there. So I share the concerns of other colleagues in that respect. The second point, now after this reclamation, you know, for Lung Kwu Tan village, probably they chose a site for the village because there's a good sea view. Well, or in the past they would consider it good feng shui. But now with reclamation, your study shows that there will be a ventilation corridor. Does it mean that there will be a feng shui effect for Lung Kwu Tan village? Have you heated views of, is it because you've heated views of Lung Kwu Tan residents, or you've had discussion with them? Because otherwise, if you do reclamation and then you put the sites to industrial use, it will really affect the village very much. Now, is a ventilation corridor enough to resolve the problem? And is it possible that the reclamation doesn't affect the village at all? Would it be better? Or maybe what if the village asked to be moved to the newly reclaimed area and they could surrender the old site to you? Have you considered that possibility?
Wow. If we're just looking at Lung Mun Road, in future, within the area of Lung Kwu Tan, we have the villagers of Lung Kwu Tan village. So we do not expect a huge number of residents in the area. So the widening of the Lung Mun Road will be a massive help. There was talk about other new projects coming on, but we do agree that traffic is a major point we have to address. Feng shui. We proposed the ventilation breezeways and preserving the water bodies. But we believe that the existing arrangement will be ideal for preserving the quality of living, the scene for the residents there. But we will stay in touch with the local stakeholders about the reclamation. Can we reduce the area of reclamation? Then we may have lower level of economic efficiency out of the reclamation. For the other brownfield operations elsewhere, then we may also have less land for those activities. But we certainly can look at all those different options. What about the issue of relocation? As to relocating the Lung Kwu Tan village, that's not what we're looking at for the study. Because we're not talking about using the land within the Lung Kwu Tan village. If you have around 400 households, that's not something we will be looking at for any relocation. Mr. Liu Chi-chuan, do you support this proposal? I think Mr. Edward Lau just put forward the views for a part of the DAB. Next, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. And then I will have to deal with something from Mr. Eddie Chu, an ad hoc motion from Mr. Eddie Chu. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. For the use of brownfield sites, operations in new territories, the Planning Department published something in November. Last year was a study. Across the territory, there were 7,300 odd brownfield sites in Hong Kong. The area was 1,414 square kilometers, providing a large number of jobs. That's around 50,000 jobs. For brownfield operations, that would be a massive rationalization if we do go ahead, because brownfield operations are a key part of the Hong Kong economy, and they mean so much for different industries. Say they offer support to the logistics industry, because there are economic activities. They're supporting the logistics industry for storage of empty containers, for example, for storing the equipment and construction material, repair of construction equipment. These are all part of the brownfield site operations. The brownfield operations also has to do with the green industries. There are so many of them. They're all part of these brownfield operations or related to brownfield operations in some way. And given our shortage of land for living, for economic activities, we are talking about serious shortage because of land scarcity. The government is trying different options to increase the supply of land. The only problem I see is that the increase is too slow. I'm not going to stand in the way of a study. This study is about reclamation in Lung Kwu Tan and replanning Tuen Mun West Area. I support this study. But then we will only know the results only after we have this study. There are many factors to consider: the impact on the local residents. How do we balance development with enhancing the quality of living for the local villagers? And also there's the factor of the ecosystem on land and at sea. We can't just guess. We need professionals to conduct a study. So I support this study. On the 15th of January, at the chamber meeting of the Legislative Council, I raised this question about the brownfield operations. But I lament the fact that the government has too many things to do, but then it has too little capacity. I think the government should look at not just the issue today, not just a short-term thing, but the government should also look at the long-term things. For the reclamation, there has to be so much has to go into the planning. There has been a lot of work done in this area. A lot of sites have been looked at. But then you have to make a decision and do something and act on the decisions. Secretary, I want to thank Dr. Lo for his support. Now to focus on the brownfield site operations, well, we have to be aware that many other things are going on at the same time. We're also going to do a study about the market sentiment, about the multi-story facilities for the brownfield operations. We hope that we can get results by the middle of this year and give the Legislative Council a detailed presentation. The Planning Department is looking at 475 hectares of brownfield sites. So we will see how much of it can be used for high-density public housing. We have a development area, something we want to do a study on. The new development areas also cover brownfield sites. We work with limited resources, but we will do what we can. For development and planning, there's a lot of heavy lifting going on. We have to work on each plot of land one after another. That's it for the questions from members. I've received this ad hoc motion from Mr. Eddie Chu. I looked at the motion, and it's related to our agenda item today. So my question for the members, do you agree to deal with this motion? So we will put the motion on the screen. Maybe we can have Mr. Eddie Chu read out the motion. This panel doesn't have to check with the members. We can just put this to a vote. We still have to ask members whether to agree. No, you don't have to do that, Chairman. Just look at the Chairman's menu. Could you listen to the clock? Just to add a thing or two. The panel has a procedure where the chairman asks the member whether they agree to deal with a motion. If everyone agrees that to go ahead, then we don't have a vote. Do we deal with this motion? Mr. Eddie Chu, can you read out your motion? Thank you, Chairman. Here's my motion. This panel believes that Lung Kwu Tan reclamation will have irreversible damage to the Lung Kwu Tan village and the marine environment. This panel believes that we should realign and rationalize the brownfield sites instead of going ahead with the reclamation. We don't have much time here, so we can only put it up there. My question to the members, do you agree? How many of you do agree with dealing with this motion? Do we have a quorum here? Yes, we do have a quorum here. We'll put this to a vote. Everyone's in your seat. We'll do it by the electronic voting system. Point of order. Do we have time for a little amendment? I'm thinking, but it's a bit tricky here. Do we deal with this motion? So I will amend it after we deal with it. Members, please vote on this. Press the button, please. Please indicate your vote if you haven't done so. This is the end of voting. We've put the results on the screen. Present 12, for 4, against 7. The motion is negative. Or it's not. To thank the government officials for attending the session. Next item. Agenda item number 4, Public Works Project C782CL. It's about the Road P1 engineering study on Road P1 Tai Ho Sunny Bay section and work progress of the Sustainable Land Tower Office. One thing to add. For the members who will speak, members who would discuss the previous agenda item, many of them were in favor of the government presenting the proposal to the Public Works Subcommittee for the previous item. We thank the government officials for attending. I have the list of attendance on your table. I'm not going to go through each name on the attendance list. We overran a bit on the previous agenda item, so we want to pick up on the pace for this agenda item. Those who wish to speak or raise questions, please press the request to speak button. Thank you. Government officials, do you have a brief presentation? Yes. This paper aims to brief members on Public Works Project 782CL engineering study on Road P1 Tai Ho Sunny Bay section. We want to upgrade this in money of the day terms. The estimated cost will be $130.2 million. The paper also talks about the Sustainable Land Tower Office's progress of work under the Civil Engineering Development Department. We have Mr. Fong from the Civil Engineering and Development Bureau Department. There is a PowerPoint presentation. The computer's not ready yet. Maybe I'll take the time to talk about the members who would like to speak. Mr. Michael Look, Mr. Frankie Yik, Ray Chen, Eddie Chu, Dr. Chen Chung Tai, Dr. Fernando Chen. Those of you who haven't pressed the button, but if you want to speak, do press the button now. Is it ready yet? Briefly, I have a few slides to walk you through this proposal. I think we are aware of this. This Northland Tower Highway is a major connection for different parts of Highway Airport. With development projects going on there, there will be the new extension of the Tung Chung New Town. There will also be the Sky City development at the airport. For the Northland Tower Highway, there's traffic congestion in the peak hours. It will turn very serious by 2023. If there's major traffic incidents along the Northland Tower Highway, there would be serious effect on the to mitigate the congestion and also to address the need for the housing need and also enhance the resilience of the Northland Tower transport network. We will commence the engineering study on the road P1 Tai Ho and Sunny Bay section. The P1 road will be 12 kilometers in length, and there will be two sections, 2.5 kilometers of Tung Chung to Tai Ho section and 9.5 kilometers from Tai Ho to Sunny Bay section. The 2.5 kilometers of the Tung Chung Road, the Tung Chung to Tai Ho section, as you can see, it's in black. That section has already been upgraded to Category A. The detailed design, the site investigation are already ongoing. Our proposal is to upgrade to Category A for the Tai Ho to Sunny Bay section. That's the dotted line in red. Road P1, Tai Ho to Sunny Bay section. It's a 9.5 kilometer road from Tai Ho Interchange going all the way to Sunny Bay, connecting to North Lantau Highway and other strategic roads. There will be viaduct, tunnels, and reclaimed areas. And there will be site investigations and site supervision. In money of the day prices, the cost will be $130.2 million in money of the day terms. The plan is that after consulting this panel in the second quarter 2020, we will ask the Finance Committee for the funding. With the approval from the Finance Committee of the Legislative Council, the study will commence in the second half of the 2020, and within 30 months, the study will be completed. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Fong.
Okay, the floor is now open to questions. Now, here, this item involves a funding application. So, in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, if members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest on the subject under discussion, the member must disclose the nature of that interest before he or she speaks. So, first, Mr. Michael Loke, the Deputy Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, there will be a substantial growth in the Tung Chung population. There's also reclamation works going on, and that's going on well. So very soon we expect to see new population intake. Now, for North Lantau Highway, whenever there's some traffic accident, there is horrible congestion. You may see that this road is parallel to the existing highway, but there is a need for it. But then we can't look at new road in isolation. We must make sure that the entire traffic network works well with this section, because maybe you have a wide section of road, but then you have bottlenecks, and then would just add to the congestion of bottlenecks, and it's not going to work. Now, so for the for the other road, the Route 11, that is, will study also commence in tandem with the Road P1 engineering study, because for Route 11 it links up with the Tuen Mun at one end and Cheng Yi at the other. For Cheng Yi, I and Ms. Alice Mack have stressed the importance of stretching the route to link up the two ends. You say you use the word proposed here, but has it been decided? That's important. And also, I would like to talk about other infrastructure projects nearby. How are they going to tie in with this road construction? Mr. Liu, thank you, Mr. Lok, for your question. Yes, it's highly relevant. For P1, it will link up with the North Lantau Highway and the Chiang Mai route. But then that's initially how it seems. Now, for the Chiang Mai link or road, we're still doing feasibility study. We hope that eventually the P1 road will link up with the Route 11. P1 road, sorry, not P2 road, my mistake. For Cheng Yi Lantau Link Road, in the Transport and Housing Bureau's feasibility study is included, so they look at that particular connection as well. My other question, for Road P1, I wonder if I've got it right. P1 road is going to be built along the coast, and along the coast there are jogging trails. The public may jog there, and in fact there are some running competitions too. So could the design accommodate the jogging facilities, so hikers and joggers could use the facilities, use the road as well? Yes, apart from the road, we plan to have a waterfront promenade and a cycling track, so this will all be part of the project. So you're going to include those? Yes. Next, Mr. Frankie Yik. Deputy Chairman, do you support this paper? Yes, I do. Next, Mr. Yik. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share the concerns of Mr. Lok. I know you have certain planning considerations, but what about the timing? Now because if you widen the new road and then the new road cannot be linked up with other traffic network, it's a waste of effort, because then there will be this bottleneck still at Chiang Mai Bridge. So that's why, timing is important for different projects to tie in with each other. Please speed up the work. I don't know which department is responsible. I support the widening of the road, and my concern really is on enclosure 2. The work of progress of work of the Sustainable Land Tile Office. That is the top side development at Hong Kong Boundary Crossing Facilities Island of Hong Kong Joy Macau Bridge. Now, regionally, the government has responded to a request to include some logistic facilities there, but now you're saying you're not going to do it, you're going to leave it to the airport authority. You say that you will keep in view the situation. Please don't just keep in view, please be actively involved. I have no idea what the airport authority has in mind so far. I've never heard that they have consulted related businesses, because on this boundary crossing facilities is suitable for airside or for air cargo logistics. So this will be the best site and most efficient site for logistics facilities to deal with air cargo. But then you say you're handing the development to the airport authorities. Can you urge them to consult the relevant sectors as soon as possible, please? And they need to do more consultation as well. Thank you. We will refer your views to the airport authority. The reason why we have commissioned the airport authority to do a study is exactly because of the synergy between the airport and the bridge. So it's a high likelihood that the site will be used for logistics facilities, of course, mainly to cater to air cargo. I wonder if the Sustainable Land Tile Office has anything else to add. Mr. Fong, please. As we pointed out in the paper, we expect the airport authority to complete the entire study by the end of this year. We've been in liaison with them, but it hasn't reached advanced stage yet, so maybe we have to wait a bit. And I'm sure when they've done the study, they'll make an announcement. But if they don't do it, I will pursue you. Okay? Yes, of course, there's need for close communication. And then Mr. Yik mentioned the need for consulting the industry. So please, Undersecretary, please remind the airport authority to step up their consultation effort. Next, Mr. Ray Chen. Thank you. I think members have all received a letter from Safe Land Tile Alliance. They say that for this item, it could be used they think they want the new road to enhance resilience, but then there is actually no need for a new road. So I want the government to respond to that. And then in enclosure 1, the department says that it involves reclamation. So what is the area of reclamation? And then enclosure 2, para 3C, that's of even greater concern to me. The government saying that for the Midwaters reclamation project will go through the finance committee procedure to apply for funding. Now, because of the anti-extradition bill campaign, the government withdrew the item on Midwaters reclamation, probably because it didn't want to cause more controversy. But what have you done so far to address the concerns of the public about this project? Because you can see the government is the public have not had more confidence in the government since June. So you going to shelve this item for now so that there won't be further controversy? And would you do more studies before coming back to LegCo? Thank you, Mr. Chan, for your questions. For the artificial island in central waters. We're still, as I said, we're still waiting for the FC to go through the FC mechanism to seek funding, and there's no question of withdrawing the proposal. During the interim, we've been in continuous discussion with various groups, including professional groups and young members of professional groups. So we've had several sessions with them. We want to listen more to their views, so we are doing something in the interim. For Road P1, it will help substantially to address the traffic congestion on North Lantau Highway. It could work, it would have independent functions to address congestion, and also it could be part of the link to Route 11. As for the Central Waters project, if it's going to go ahead, the roads, the main routes from Central Waters could be linked up here too. The area for reclamation, please. Can I ask the CDD to answer that, Mr. Mack or Mr. Fong? Now, for the reclamation area, we looking initially at about 2 kilometers long near Siu Ho Wan, and because by the depot, Siu Ho Wan depot, that road is really narrow. So if we want to build P1 road, and we want cycling tracks, waterfront promenades as well, then we do need small-scale reclamation. We expect the reclamation area, well, I just mentioned the length will be about 1 to 2 kilometers. As for the area, it will be around 15 hectares in total. I do not support this item, Mr. Chairman. Next, Mr. Eddie Chu. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to focus on the progress of work of the Sustainable Lantau Office. You might recall in 2017, when this office was to be set up, the item came to the establishment subcommittee and the finance committee. I kept stressing a point. You can't keep saying that you're going to do development on the north and conservation on the south. For conservation on the south, there must be specific legislation and law enforcement to stop the destruction caused to the southern part of Lantau Island almost day to day. Now, I just looked up my own remarks made at the establishment subcommittee meeting. I could read it out. I say there are parts of the southern part of the Lantau island, they're not covered by relevant legislation, though the government could not stop some landowners from dumping construction waste there, and so there's damage to the habitat there. And then the Permanent Secretary then said, now, after we set up the Sustainable Lantau Office, we will try to discuss with the local residents and the green groups as soon as possible to resolve the matter. The government's policy objectives always been to conserve the southern part of Lantau Island. So we're not going to, urge people, stop. We're not going to allow people to damage. That's why landowners have no incentive to destroy their own land. That's what he said. Well, this permanent secretary is retired, but what he said has been proven totally wrong. After the Sustainable Lantau Office was set up, there were at least 29 cases of newly reported damage or destruction to the environment there. It's because the government could not enforce law. There's no law to cover it, and also the current law is so useless that it's easy for landowners to use the site for dumping construction waste. So you have deceived us. Of course, at the time I voted against the item, but you've deceived the public. You said that there will be sustainable development in Lantau. Now, for the northern part of Lantau, you are pressing ahead with development, but for conservation on the southern part of Lantau, you have done nothing. So I think you should just disband the office altogether. You should just say that there will be development on the north. Forget about conservation on the south, because you're just deceiving the public. Or You tell us when you're going to amend the relevant legislation so that you have teeth to stop such destruction at once.
I want to thank the views from Mr. Eddie Chu in terms of administration and conservation. I'll defer to the CEDD to talk more about that. About amending the relevant legislation, there is so much technical and legal issues we have to sort out, say interface between the amendments and the legislative framework. There are many things we have to look at, cases in the past, enforcement, supervision, inspections. Depending on the needs, amount of need and the complexity of the amendment, we will have expect to have the preliminary results of the review, and we hope that we can present the results to the Legislative Council by the middle of this year. Chair, there's also this legislation about how to handle waste. How are you going to? What will you do after you review the legislation on municipal waste? The Environmental Protection Department is also looking into the matter of waste. Mr. Fong, do you have anything to add about the legislation? Undersecretary just talked about this. I won't go into that. One thing to add from me, we are clear on the fact that for conservation, we need more than just legislation. There has to be administrative arrangements. We need a multi-pronged approach to this. Everything has to work together. For this, in this paper about dumping of construction materials, we do have something on this. There is administrative arrangements on this. Maybe I'll just add a thing or two on this. We're trying a range of options. We're stepping up the monitoring of government works. In 2018, the planning department also issued a circular requiring that all new works through tender, there has to be provisions banning the contractors from occupying the land of ecological conservation value for storage purposes. We believe that we have to step up the control over the source. So in 2018 and 2019, we held briefing sessions reminding stakeholders, including those in Lantau, the different kinds of contractors and work supervisors in Lantau. We reminded them that they have to step up the supervision and handle the construction material and construction waste. For the government, in government works contracts, there will be a mandatory requirement for installation of global positioning or GPS systems. For the Tongchong New Town Extension project in the Area 52 or the landslide prevention and control project in Lantau, we also make it a requirement for contractors to install these global positioning systems or GPS systems. We see we have achieved good results. As for government land that has already suffered damage, we have done some work to restore these plots of land. Say in Mapo Ping, woodland has been damaged, but the restoration has been substantially completed. Mr. Editor, do you support this proposal about study over the P1 road? I do not support that. I do not support it. Next, Ms. Dr. Chen Chong-tai, Chairman. About development in Lantau, I have made it clear that I object to these developments. For this item, looks simple, straightforward. It's just about the P1 road, Tai Ho and Sunny Bay section. But Safe Lantau Alliance and other groups championing the cause of Lantau, they have this impression. The government is doing all kinds of developments in Lantau. They're just breaking development projects down into smaller development projects. In terms of the priority and how things are lined up, the government is creating a false impression to rush to justify future development. Say, take this P1 road. You're saying there is future need for this road. But I think But the authorities have to prove that what they're saying is true. In Area 54 of Tongchong, the road will be there before the housing developments are there. Once with the population intake of the Area 52, and we're talking about the eastern part of Tongchong. If you don't have the transport facilities, the people will feel it's very inconvenient with their transport. And then you say there are more people, and then there will be need for the transport. But let's look at the problem. When you are lining up the different development projects, you are developing new towns there. But the roads development and not development projects. You're saying you can say there are delays in the project, and then you say that people do need the transport in the future. But for the Lantau development project, especially the Sustainable Lantau Office, all these projects styled as conservation projects, we see the numbers there. After the establishment of the Sustainable Lantau Office, that means September, there were 73 cases of environmental vandalism. There were also cases that happened before the office was set up, 29 cases of environmental vandalism after the office was set up. What's the impression we're getting? Was that in the north, there is development to meet the long-term need, but in the south, conservation in the south, it's clear that there is the work about following up the environmental vandalism hasn't been done, and then there are new cases of environmental vandalism. My question, there is all this criticism, especially these development projects under the guise of conservation. What are the specific measures that the authorities have to address the concern of the Lantau groups? I want to thank Dr. Chen for his views. For conservation, about say dumping of construction material in ecologically sensitive areas in Lantau, won't go too much into that. But then we have other conservation measures. I'll defer to the Sustainable Lantau Office, Mr. Fong. Now, I talked about some things, so I won't go into detail about those. Areas of high ecological value. Ever since the Sustainable Lantau Office was set up, for areas like Pui O, show you how areas of high ecological values, there were ecological studies. So we hope we could establish something of a baseline so that we can think about feasible conservation measures in the future. As for private land of high ecological value, we proposed this establishment of this Lantau Conservation Fund. We hope that, we expect that by the middle of this year, with the approval from the Legislative Council, we will carry out the related relevant works, so that by early next year we can receive applications to the Lantau Conservation Fund. So for the non-government organizations and other title holders in areas, we can take a collaborative approach and go ahead with the conservation initiatives. Dr. Chen, do you support this proposal? No, I do not support it. Next, Dr. Fernando Chen. The P1 road is lumped with the Sustainable Lantau Office. I find it weird because they are two different matters. On this progress report of the Sustainable Lantau Office, other members have already raised its point. The Save Lantau Alliance gave us their submission. They made it clear that ever since the Sustainable Lantau Office was set up, there were cases of environmental vandalism for the wetlands. We're also receiving another submission from Hong Kong Outdoors from Dr. Martin Williams. He talked about the coastal protection areas, the wetlands in those areas have been the target of dumping of construction materials. We can see from these submissions and papers in the enclosure under heading F, we have 1 to 7. There are many measures. But point number 7, it's about collaboration with the relevant departments to deal with the cases of environmental vandalism and stepping up the statutory enforcement. I don't see that working in terms of stopping what we see in the South Lantau, the auto environmental vandalism in Southern Lantau. You're saying that there are kinds of review going on. You're saying you're still deciding when to go ahead with the measures. The office has been set up for around 2 years. The damage to the wetlands has been so serious. How much longer are you going to wait before you do something effective? It's not even talking about conservation. We're just talking about controlling the damage, stopping the further damage. Undersecretary, I want to thank Dr. Chen for his concern. Under the town planning ordinance, there are changes to that. We hope that by the middle of this year, we can brief the panel on development on that. But about the legislative amendments, it will take time. So for now, at the administrative level, we will working with different departments and administrative arrangements. It will be very important. Relevant departments involved in this process have been there have been administrative measures that Mr. Fong also talked about. Just please bear with us. Be patient. Chair. Patience is something that developers lack. They will do something as quickly as possible. Areas that government has designated for conservation, the developers will just go ahead with their development project for their profits. And you're asking us to bear with you. In a few years' time, the area that we can still conserve, there will be little of them left. You're just saying stepping up the collaboration between different parties. Have you no way to stop people from damaging the wetlands? Undersecretary. Chair. If there are activities that are technically legal, then there was no way for us to stop them. I think this is the crux of the matter. If there are activities that are illegal, that are against the rules, the relevant departments will enforce the law. Chair, does it mean that legally damaging the environment, blocking the waterways, dumping of public fuel? So are we just asking us to stand by and let them do the damage? I think you may have to plug in the loopholes. I got his views, Chair. We still have 2 members who would like to ask questions first round. We have limited time here. Mr. Eddie Chu also has an ad hoc motion. After Dr. Lu Wai-kwok and Mr. Lung Kwu Tan speak, I will deal with the ad hoc motion from Mr. Eddie Chu. Dr. Lu Wai-kwok. Chair, I support this proposal about the P1 road, about this engineering study on the P1 road, Tai-ho to Sunny Bay section. We just have the North Lantau Highway as the transport link for the local residents and connecting to the airport for tourists as well. That's less than ideal. The engineering study on this road P1 is long overdue. And then we have the Tung Chung New Town extension. It's going full steam ahead. The reclamation to the east of Tung Chung, as far as I'm aware, has also made good progress. The 3-runway project at the airport is also going on. Chair, I have to lament this. All these support facilities, especially transport, the government is always taking too long. If you ask local residents about P1 road, they will certainly want to have another road in the area. There's not much of a question from me on this topic. Just want to see the things getting done quickly. If the results come out and there are engineering issues with the alignment that can be sorted out, and something to be done about the planning, the earlier the works get started, the better it will be to meet the needs of our citizens and tourists. As for Lantau Link, you still have problems there. The future, are there other ways to improve the traffic situation in the entire area? Can you also tell us about that here? Chair, I want to thank Dr. Lo for his support. After the Finance Committee approves our funding request, we will get started with the study as soon as possible. As for the transport connection to the other areas, the bottleneck issue we talked about, Route 11 will be part of it. And if the Finance Committee of the Legislative Council approves the study for the artificial island in Central Waters, the P1 road will also be part of this network involving the artificial island. Dr. Lo, follow-up questions from you? No follow-up question from me. I want to see this study, this engineering study, getting started as soon as possible. Mr. Lung Kwu Tan is not in his seat. I will deal with the motion, the ad hoc motion from Mr. Eddie Chu. Not sure if we have enough time here. I'll give you 2 minutes. At the same time, maybe you can read out the ad hoc motion.
Now I see that there is the town planning ordinance which cannot be enforced, and the waste disposal ordinance not really working well. And I've received complaints about taking up government land for construction. For example, near Shat Peak Reservoir, the big wave village there, or Tai Long Wan village, there are developers, doing major rainwater channel works on government land. So that you promise that if you can take action, you will do so as soon as possible. You won't allow people to use government land as private land. You say you won't let them do it. So that's my first question. So let me read out my motion. No, well, please, your motion. Is relevant to the subject under discussion, so please read out your motion. This panel believes that since the establishment of the Sustainable Lantau Office at the end of 2017, it's done nothing on conservation in Lantau North, South, and also we have identified at least 29 cases of destruction caused to the environment. We are most disappointed with the work of the office, and we condemn the office. Well, Mr. Chu, if you have information on that case, please refer the information to us. If it involves encroaching of government land, we could take immediate enforcement action. On Mr. Eddie Chu's tabled motion, can I ask members whether you agree to deal with the motion? Now, we actually do not have a quorum here. Can we ask members to come back to vote on Mr. Eddie Chu's tabled motion? So the bell will be rung for 5 minutes. Members, we would like to ask members whether we would deal with the motion tabled by Mr. Eddie Chu is shown on the screen. So we just want to seek members' views on whether to deal with the motion. We need to put it to a vote by, open ballot. So that's why we need to call members back to vote. We are again going to use the electronic voting system, so members could show your position as to whether you support or not the motion, or whether you want to abstain. It's about whether to handle the motion here. It's been read out. The motion's been read out. You want it to be read out again, please? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. This panel believes that the Sustainable Lantau Office, which was established at the end of 2017, has done nothing in relation to the conservation of the southern part of Lantau. Local groups have found at least 29 cases of destruction to the environment. The panel is deeply disappointed with the work of the office, and we condemn the office. So we just want to vote on whether to deal with the motion first. That's the first thing to consider. We now proceed to vote. Voting begins. Members, please check your vote. If you haven't voted yet, please press the button now. Voting is closed. The results are displayed. Present 18 for, 6 against, 10, abstention 1. So we will not deal with Mr. Eddie Chu's tabled motion. Just now, many members spoke. Some expressed support, some opposition to the study on Road P1 and on whether to refer it to the Public Works Subcommittee. I think I'll leave it to the administration because you've heard all the views, okay? So that's the end of this item. Can we invite the government representatives for the next item to join us, please? Next item, PWP item numbers 666CL and 681CL. Formation, roads and drains in Area 54, Tuen Mun Phases 1 and 2. Now, for members who wish to speak, please press the button or raise your hand. I would like to welcome the government representatives to join us for item 5. The attendance list is tabled, so I will not introduce the team one by one. Who would like to do a presentation, please? A brief one, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Together with the CDD and the Housing Department, we are here to attend the meeting to brief members on 2 funding applications relation to Tuen Mun developments. One is the remaining part of 666CL. It's about upgrading it to category A for the construction of phase 1 stage 2 works. The other is item number 681, upgrading of it to category A for the construction of phase 2 stage 4B works. For 666CL is to form 0.7 hectares of land for subsidized sale flats development. The project cost is about $48.2 million in money of the day terms. As for CCS for the other project, it's about forming 1 hectare of land for public rental housing, and another site of 1.3 hectares is for school development. There will also be associated infrastructure and road facilities, including local improvement to the Lam Tay interchange. The money of the day cost is $264.3 million. For the 2 projects, the total cost is $312 million or so. And if the funding is approved, then we plan to start works in 2021, and then we could complete the projects in 2015. Now I'll invite Mr. Choi of the CDD to give you the details of the 2 projects. Thank you. Mr. Choi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. I will use a few PowerPoints to introduce the 2 projects to you. 666, that's Area 54, formation roads and drains in Area 54, Tuen Mun Phase 1 and Phase 2. That includes land formation and ancillary works for public housing development and school development. Now for Area 54 is at the northwestern part of Tuen Mun between Po Tin Estate and Siu Hong Court. Here you see Area 54, the whole development layout plan. We're talking about 40.6 hectares land to be formed, 12 hectares so for public housing development, and about 2 hectares for GIC development, government institution and community development. And then we're going to do ancillary works as well. The CDD will do the works in 2 stages or in 2 phases. For the area surrounded by the green line, that's the phase 1, and then for the area surrounded by the red line, that's the phase 2. Actually, work started since September 2011, stage by stage. For the one with the shaded area that's been completed. Now for the one shaded with boxes, that's the works are still underway, and will be completed by the middle of this year. For the first batch of public rental housing, that's the pink shaded areas that's been completed, and then people moved in since 2018. So here, the applications for phase 1, stage 2, and phase 2, stage 4B. The purple shaded areas.
For the works, there will be site formation for 3 plots of land. Site number 5 to the left in purple, that will be for subsidized sale flat. For site 4A, you see the 2 parts in blue towards the south. That will be for public rental housing. And for the site 4A to the east, upper part of it, that will be for schools. We will also have the relevant, associated roads, a 200-meter length. There will be a different kind of ring. 100-meter 2-lane village road. We will also be widening a section of the existing road to a single 2-lane carriageway to meet the needs of a local community. There will also be something for the Lam Tay interchange, local improvement. For site 4A to the north of that site, we'll have a 5-meter high noise barrier to mitigate the noise impact. And then we will also have the footpaths, slopes, retaining walls, landscaping works as well. see the site formation information about the 3 plots. About 0.7 hectares will be for subsidized sale flat, and we'll expect to provide around 700 flat. And around for the site for A in light blue will be a hectare in area, will be for public rental housing, expected to provide 1,000 housing units. For the site for A East, it would be for schools, it would be 1.3 hectares. As you can see on this slide, that's the Lam Tay interchange. We will have local improvement works. This is a scope of the works. We're going to detail about what the works will cover. In the yellow area, that's for the proposed improvement for the road signage and widening of the road. For the area in pink, we propose something about the footpaths alignment. There will be improvement. For the green area, there will be the green for planters. Slide number 7, you see Lam Tay interchange. That's the site of the local improvement works. The top right-hand corner, you see the current situation. To the bottom left, you see the site after improvement. The area in yellow, that's the existing carriageway. In light purple, violet part of it, you see the road proposed to be widened. And you see that's for connecting the Lam Tay interchange and Castle Peak Highway. For the 2-lane and 3-lane we're widening to 3-lane to 4-lane carriageways. That's what the red arrows are for. For this slide, you see the Lam Tay interchange towards Tuen Mun Highway. There will be changes to the road signages. To the left, you see what things are now. To the right, after the improvement. After the changes to the road signages, we'll make changes to the road, so there will be a separate carriageway towards Tuen Mun. After the changes, the Lam Tay interchange will be able to meet the needs. That's all from me for the briefing. I hope members will support our work. Thank you, Mr. Choi. Questions from members. Before the questions, I want to remind members this has to do with this is a funding application according to Rules of Procedure 83A. If members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in this proposal, members please disclose your pecuniary interest before you speak. Members who have indicated they want to speak or express their views are as follows. I will go for the names. We have 4 of them. Mr. Eddie Chu, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Dr. Chen Chung Tai, Mrs. Regina Ip. Question and answer 4 minutes for everyone. First, Mr. Eddie Chu. Thank you, Chair. My question, I want to clarify on this site for A. Is that for public facilities? Could you be specific? What kind of public facilities? When will the work be completed? Site 4A. There are 3 parts of them. There is the eastern, there's southern, and western part of it. Site 4A is currently going through the works. It's planned for government, institution, and community use. As far as I know, it's for community halls and the relevant facilities. You're just working on the formation, but the community hall is not something that's been finalized. Correct. For us, the Civil Engineer and Development Department, we work on the site formation. We expect that by next year, the site after site formation will be handed to the Lands Department and to the relevant policy bureaus to develop the community leisure facilities or the community hall. As far as I'm aware, next year we will have something. Is it next year? Yes, next year we will consult the district councils about the development proposal. Thank you, Chair. Chair, follow-up question. I'm aware that for these large areas, these development projects, they come in phases. We understand that. But then it has happened time and again that these community facilities, schools, community halls, as in the case we have Yantian Estate already had its intake back in 2018. But then for the school, the formation has been put at a lower priority. Why this is this the case? You're telling us that you have 6 stages in phase 2. Were these community facilities planned in advance, but then they were placed at the very end, towards the very end of the plan? Is it something that you planned in the very beginning? I want to thank Mr. Eddie Chu for his question. For Area 52 in Tuen Mun, the development project comes in different phases. We go one step at a time. There are reasons for that. One reason is that some of the land here has to go through some of the statutory processes, such as land resumption. For different plots of land, the time taken was different. And as Mr. Eddie Chu just said, the planning department was planning for the facilities. There were schools. This area is mainly for housing development. So you see, some housing projects were already completed, but the schools were still outstanding. In Tuen Mun, there are schools in the periphery, in different estate, primary schools, secondary schools. They are there, sports facilities. So it was your plan to have the school completed later. That was your plan. Is that correct? We look at it as a whole and look at the needs. The relevant policy bureaus look at the needs, and then they take forward their projects accordingly. Chair, simple follow-up question. So for Campton South, the housing estate, schools were planned and so were other community facilities. For the projects like these we have in Area 52, without the site formation, is it abnormal to have facilities in place without going through the site formation done by the CEDD? Simply put, in different areas, the local situation is taken into account in the development project. For Area 52 in Tuen Mun, sorry, I want to make sure that, sorry, Chairman, in Area 52, I know that you have already included the schools and community facilities in your project, in your site formation project. Shouldn't other districts follow this same standard, the same example? I think the members is more concerned about the timing. Thank you, Chair. Even for Area 52, Area 54, there are different sites. Even for housing units, the projects were carried out at different times, so were the schools. One of the factoring reasons you see here for the delay in having the schools is that we had to go through the statutory processes. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Eddie Chu, do you support this proposal? I'm not sure what the Secretary was saying, but Dr. Wai Kwok. Chair, I'll be brief, Chairman. I support this proposal. Area 52 in Tuen Mun, this site formation will be able to provide around 1,000 public rental housing units. The neighboring site has been reserved up to 1.3 hectares for schools. At another location, 0.7 hectares. That's for 700 subsidized sale flat units. Given the shortage of housing supply and the scarcity of land, these are not major housing projects for this proposal, but then they're better than nothing. That's why I want to express my support for this proposal. I want to see the works get started as soon as possible. For Lam Tay interchange, the local improvement works for the Lam Tay interchange, I think the improvement works are needed. We need the improvement early on. I think that will certainly go a long way towards improving the situation for the local residents. That's why I support this proposal. Also support the related drainage works and infrastructure works. Principal Assistant Secretary, do you have any brief response? I want to thank the member for his support. Next, Dr. Chen Chong-tai. Thank you, Chair. First point for me. It's about the figures. Area 54 is for Site 4A South. That's for will provide around 1,000 units, and Site 5 that will provide around 700 units. Roughly speaking, what's the size of the population increase we can expect? I can work out the expected increase in the population, especially for Site 4A. How high will be the buildings be? 38 stories, 40 stories? We don't know the story. But what will be the size of the population increase? I want to thank the member for his question. A rough estimate. For each unit, it depends on the needs of each household. For each unit, we're looking at 2.7 to 3 persons per unit. So if you have 1,000 units, there will be 2,000 or 3,000 people. 700 units, that will be roughly 2,000 people. Chair. For Area 52, for these two development proposals, public rental housing and subsidized sale flats, there will be around 7,000 people in terms of population increase. My question has to do another question about the footpaths and the roads. For Siu Hong Station, there will be replanning on the traffic part aspect of it. But after Siu Hong Court and Yantian Estate are completed, the public rental housing will be next to Yantian Estate. Siu Hong Court in the area, there will be more problems in the area. Siu Hong Court is home ownership scheme unit. The residents there don't want the irrelevant, don't want the people that they're not supposed to be there around. The fastest way for them to get through the area is to go past Siu Hong Court. There is already friction between the local residents living in the housing estate and those passers-by. And there are people who don't live there are not supposed to go through the HOS scheme flat unit. I can understand that you're not supposed to ask people to enter Siu Hong MTR station through Siu Hong Court. But now you have another housing development projects for around 4,000 people next to Siu Hong Court. That will leave Siu Hong Court crowded. For the footpaths, you have two public housing units next to an HOS housing development. There will be resentment in the area. Have you done anything, or what are you going to do about the problem? And you have the population increase. The Siu Hong station is already under heavy load because there's an interchange for the light rail transit or LRT. If you have another 6,000 or 7,000 people in the area, how's the area going to cope? This is going to be a source of resentment and anger in the area. What will you do about this? Thank you, Chair.
Principal Assistant Secretary, thank you, Dr. Zhang. Your question covers the foot traffic as well as the capacity of the Siu Hong station. Can I invite Mr. Wong to answer the question? Now, we have an arrangement with the Housing Department. At Siu Hong Road, towards the end, there is footpath already provided. So for Yantian Estate residents, they just walk across the junction, and then at the end of Siu Hong Road, there is a new pedestrian link to the Siu Hong station. And then at the end of this year, at the bus stop of Siu Hong, there is an escalator. There will be an escalator to take pedestrians up to the podium, so people don't have to walk through Siu Hong Court to get to the Siu Hong station. That will be the new arrangement. So this will be, more convenient for pedestrians, right? They don't need to go through Siu Hong Court, correct? Okay, this is about accommodating Yantian Estate residents, but then for Area 54, there will be a new public housing estate. How are you going to avoid the same problem? Please be brief in your reply. For the HOS site, now it's closer actually to the Po Tien Estate bus terminus, so residents probably will go that way for commuting purpose. I'm talking about Area 4A, or 4A rather, Site 4A. Now for 4A, they can use the new Road L54 to go to Chi Tin Road, and then at Ching Lo Road and Siu Hong Court at the junction there's already a pedestrian crossing facility. It's footbridge. And there's escalator serving the footbridge. So residents could walk through there to get to the Siu Hong station. So there is already such an arrangement. Thank you. Mrs. Regina Ip, thank you. Well, this meeting clashes my other meeting. I've been moving forth and back, and so maybe my questions have been answered. But I'm concerned about the traffic. I've been to Po Tien Estate. I know is remotely located. There are many low-income households and elderly persons. Now, for Site 5, you're going to build subsidized sales flat. Is it HOS or first homes? No, our plan is for subsidized flat sales. So I think it will be HOS, right? It's not for first-time home buyers, right? I think the Department of Housing, well, it will be subsidized sales flat, but as to the exact type, we might make adjustment in the future. Okay, what would be the traffic arrangement? Now, you say at Po Tien Estate there is an interchange. That means people have to take the bus. They can't take the train. It will be most inconvenient for them to commute to work. So what is the traffic arrangement? Can you tell us? Thank you, Mrs. Yip, for your questions. Now, in response to Dr. Zhang's question, we mentioned that at Po Tien Estate there will be bus services, and these bus services will serve other districts as well, and the bus services will take people to nearby rail stations. So for Site 5 residents, it's just one road across, and then they will get to Po Tien Estate. Any follow-up for 4A? Just now, questions were asked about the traffic issue. There are roads to link people to Siu Hong Station, right? Can you be more specific? Well, you mean for pedestrians? Yes, for pedestrians. That means you say they don't even need to go through Siu Hong Court, so people can walk to Siu Hong Station, right? Would there be facilities to facilitate that, right? Mr. Wong, well, as I mentioned, residents from Site 4A could go through the newly built Road L54, and then at Chi Tin Road they cross the junction, and very quickly they will get to Siu Hong Station. Would that be a covered walkway? Is it a covered walkway? Footbridge or what? For between Chi Tin Road and Ching Long Road, there's some covered footbridge served by escalators. As for other sections, we have no plans for covered walkway for now. I hope there will be covers for all the sections because it's quite a long walk, and we have an aging population. It would be tough for residents to be subjected to the elements. So perhaps the department will consider Mrs. Yip's suggestion. Do you support referring the item to the PWC? Yes, I do. Thank you. Next, Dr. Fernando Zhang. Well, I support the projects, Mr. Chairman, to build the needed housing or public facilities. So I think we should support such works. But to pick up on Mr. Eddie Chu's question about planning, to the west of Site 4A, Mr. Chu mentioned that there will be some community facilities there, for the land to be formed. For example, sports facilities, and there may also be school development. So my question is, very often these facilities come after the major developments or redevelopments. So in other words, there will be population intake first before these facilities are ready. So this has always been a source of frustration to residents. Now for this project, it seems that we're not at the planning stage, but rather at the work stage. And then questions were asked of the government officials, and we're told that it is now irrelevant. Now, I think that's, that's a source of frustration. Very often we use much public resources to build these projects, and then by the time residents move in, they move to the Wild West. Waiting for further development is a painful experience. So shouldn't there be comprehensive planning? Shouldn't you do social impact assessment? So government departments should at least have certain directions to guide their planning. That is, for residents there or going to move into there, you should consider the needs when you consider the planning of projects. So we are talking about the overall planning direction. And then when you decide on time frame for land formation or the construction of public facilities and so on, you bear in mind the need to tie in the developments, because now it seems that we're just leaving it to luck. Is up, whether the residents are lucky or not to have the facilities in place. So do you not? Shouldn't you do that, and shouldn't you introduce social impact assessment as soon as possible, or at an earlier stage? Well, thank you very much for your questions. For housing development and the ancillary facilities, if they could all be completed at the same time, of course, that would be the best in meeting residents' needs. For Area 54 in Tuen Mun, if I may say this, now for all land developments, including Yan Tin Estate, in our plans, apart from building the public housing, we also have relevant community facilities and recreation facilities such as basketball court, badminton court, shopping malls, kindergartens, and so on. For Site 1A, it's now been handed over to the Housing Department, and there will be such supporting facilities. So within the site, there will be the developments of relevant facilities. As for Site 4A, for that particular site, that is a community center, the sports center, and so on. Now, it will serve more than just Site 4A. It will be serving the community. And then for the issues raised by Dr. Fernando Zhang, our team has considered the whole picture. Now, in the district, there are existing community centers and sports ground. There is still surplus capacity to serve the residents of Tuen Mun. Thank you. I asked whether you could bring in social impact assessment as soon as possible. You did not answer my question. Thank you for your suggestion. We've heard that. In doing works design, we will consider this. Thank you. I think what Dr. Zhang has brought up is an issue of concern to all members. That is that we need to have supporting facilities for any development, transport facilities, traffic facilities, and so on. Now, is it the responsibility of the Development Bureau? Because you must have you must have a program and plans and so on. And our concern is that now many different departments and even Policy Bureau are involved. So would it be the Development Bureau that does the coordination? Maybe you are not the lead as such, but at least you have to make sure things tie in with each other. Because in the past we've seen many cases of people moving in without support facilities. They're made the pioneers in the area. But is there a bureau responsible for looking at such issues? And then the bureau will remind other departments to make sure that their works programs time with each other. Of course, there will be changes. We could appreciate that. Maybe there's been delay in the works, and so maybe certain facilities are ready, but they think they don't need to be commissioned yet. I don't know if there is such coordination within the government, because I think it's important. I think it's not just Dr. Fernando Zheng. I've heard other members expressing similar wish that the government would do better in this respect. Thank you. Yes, indeed, we have such coordination. The government is a team as a whole. We have different departments taking charge of different tasks. And then when it comes to the development of works projects, there is coordination. At the planning stage, there will be coordination done. Say in advanced studies, we will refer the issue to the relevant policy bureau, and then we have steering committees. And then the different bureau and departments could discuss issues together. We will then set the scope on the use of the project, and then when it comes to taking forward the projects, of course, then we're talking more than just about works. There will be the question of future use and so on. So a project steering committee will be set up. And a relevant policy bureau will be represented. So there will be better coordination. Thank you.
I thank you for taking up this matter. I think the government has been doing something, but the problem is it's the outcome. The problem is still there. Those who moved in first, but then they lacked all those supporting facilities. This is not a new issue. It has been there for a long time. That's why this Legislative Council has always been talking about this. How do you take a more systematic approach to this planning problem to avoid these issues? I'm not saying you haven't done anything, but saying I know you have been hard at work on this, but it's the outcome. The outcome is flawed. There are all kinds of problems. There are things the community has been talking about: a social impact assessment. We have environmental impact assessment, traffic impact assessment. It shouldn't be also we have a social impact assessment. This is not just for this particular project, which is already doing its site formation, but we should also look at for the source of the problem. The government should take it seriously. How the government can consider something like a social impact assessment. There are problems to be followed up. The impression of members and members here and members of the public that they see room for improvement, but as to the ways of improvement, then that's something for the authorities to look into. Mr. Abraham Sheikh, I want to follow up on something brought up by Mrs. Regina Ip. Subsidy. It's about the subsidized flat. The government said that it has not made up its mind about the subsidized flats. Why is there no decision yet? There are 200,000 odd people on the wait list for public rental housing. You have all these sites here. You haven't made up your mind on the flats to be provided. And what about timeline? What are the criteria on which you make your decisions? Is it a question for Ms. Angela C? You can't just say that you haven't made up your mind. This is unacceptable. Many people are on the wait list for public rental housing. You have to give us something. Site number 5, it's for public rental housing. Just that Mrs. Regina Ip raised this question. I want to thank Mr. Abraham Sheikh for his question. Site number 5, for now, it's meant for subsidized sale flat. As Mr. Sheikh just then, there will be changes to the demand. The works are supposed to complete in 2026, and we will do timely reviews as to what we will provide. Is it going to be public rental housing or subsidized sale flat? What do you still need to think about? the Public Accounts Committee talked about something 2 years ago. We talked about this wait list for public rental housing from 3.5 years to an average of 5 years and 4 months. Every day there are new additions to the wait list. And in your office, you're still saying you haven't made up your mind. And there are many people living in terrible housing, all kinds of substandard housing. But then you appear just to don't care about this. When can you make up your mind and come to a decision? How much time is it going to take? You're supposed to serve the public. There's a problem out there. You're not supposed to just let this happen. We have the Public Accounts Committee monitoring you, asking you for a timetable. You have the site, you have a plan, and then you're telling us you haven't made up your mind, you don't have a decision. You have to let us know what are the criteria on which you make your decision. Please give us the criteria. Something should be put on the record. Miss Angela C. We have a tentative plan here for subsidized sale flat. But then we still have the flexibility. We can make changes in the future. If there's nothing special happening, then we will turn this into a subsidized sales flat. Chair, there are many sites for public rental housing. The sites were meant for public rental housing, but then they were turned into homeownership, white form or green form subsidized sale flat. This is not good. The government policy is to give people housing. It's not help people with home ownership. This is something wrong with the mentality of your government officials. You have no idea what you're doing. I want you to let us know when you will make up your mind. When would you make a decision on this? Is it subsidized sale flat? I think your plan is to build subsidized sale flat instead of public rental housing. For this site formation, we have 2 plots of land. The first plot, site 4A South, that's for public rental housing, meant for around 1,000 housing units. For site number 5, tentatively speaking, we're looking at subsidized sale flat. The members concerned about the number of units of public rental housing that will be covered by site number 5. For site 4A South, that's for public rental housing. Just then, when you were replying to Mrs. Regina Ip's question, you talked about the subsidized sale flat. What's your decision about the public rental housing? You have to be clear on the kind of public rental, the kind of subsidized sale flat you're providing. Is it going to be a starter homes? Is it going to be home ownership schemes? Do you have a timetable on this? You need design after formation. You're talking about the completion year that will be 2026 or 2027. But then you have to make up your mind before you go ahead with the design and the construction. If you haven't made up your mind yet, then I need this answer from the official on public rental. There has to be a decision to be made on whether this is going to be a home ownership flat, HOS flat, or public rental housing. I think the decision has been made. Subsidized sale flat, there has to be a specific answer on what kind of housing this will be. Mr. Abraham Sheck, you were talking about the timetable. You're saying how long before the completion you have to make up your mind and criteria for deciding whether this will be public rental housing or something else. Chair, there's a duty on the government to build public housing. Public rental housing. The wait list is 5 years and 4 months. At this point, the officials could have made up my mind, could have made a decision on this, but then they're still making that decision. I need an explanation from the officials. That's the first point. Second, if the officials have the officials should have a timetable there. Completion date, you said 2027, 2026. What kind of public housing would that be? Sorry, you have to be clear. I want to thank Mr. Sheck for his question. The question was clear. Let me just add this. In Area 52 in Tuen Mun, site for the different sites, they will be providing around 14 or 15,000 housing units. For site number 5, in terms of the planning, this will be for subsidized sale flat. As our colleague from the housing department just said, the kind of subsidized sale flat has not been settled yet today. After we received the funding approval, we would complete the site formation in 2023, and then we hand over the site to the housing department. Completion date is in somewhere in 2026 and 2027, and then we have the intake. We still have years ahead of us, so there's time for us to decide what kind of subsidized sale flat we do to meet the society's needs. The members' views just then about further information on the specific kind of subsidized sale flat, that's the kind of view that the housing department has taken a view, and maybe we will come back with information later on. I hope the government can understand. The priority for you is not home ownership. For subsidized sale flat, 290,000 people. How many years is it going to take? No matter which department you're talking about, you're part of the government. You need a strategy in place. You need a strategy for those on the wait list for public rental housing to give them access to housing so that we don't have a wait list that goes to 5 years and 4 months. There are new people added to the wait list every day. If you're telling us then there will be no new addition to the wait list, then that's fine. But then you need a comprehensive strategy, a plan here. Should get a clear idea on the shortage of land and the amount of the land needed for public rental housing and other forms of subsidized sales flat. I'm not singling you out, Monsieur. The government has to be clear on this. They need to plan ahead. So many things have happened we see that shows the government has no plan in advance. Many people living in cubicle homes and other kinds of substandard housing that's bad for children to grow up in. Government officials need to have a clear idea on how to solve the problem. You can't just tell us you haven't made up your mind or you haven't made a decision. There's something wrong with the mentality. I want to add something here. The people's priority or our priority is our priority. We do have something here. The Yantian estate was completed in 2017, towards the end of 2017. There were 2 sites meant for public rental housing, Site 1 and Site 1A, and 4,200 odd units. And then for Site 3, and there will be 5,000 odd public rental housing units. As for this particular proposal, the 2 plots involved, one of the plots will be for public rental housing, the other plot for subsidized sale flat, but then there might be changes in the future. It's about time to thank the government officials for attending the meeting today. Members, as to whether I think members do support the idea of submitting this proposal to the Public Works Subcommittee for consideration. Any other business? No? So meeting is adjourned. Thank you for attending.